Okay, let's just say a little hello to everyone who's watching. It's like 10 minutes into the video. Hi there. I'm going to do some inking on the box, which is story here. And I believe in the description text, you will find mention of the work, but I'll put in the chat as well. This is a link to all the progress so far and posts related to the box, which is one of a number of short stories going into Mind Engines, my next book. It's a personal anthology series. I just learned that all my classes for the last week of the semester are canceled. So I guess that's for the best. I want to flatten that curve. I'm going to have a lot more time to ink and get stuff done. I'm hoping that this stuff all burns itself out by May, because I have some big shows in May I was going to go to, and this book gets launched in May. I think I should probably share this link over on my socials. Is that what that is? Yes, that is what that is. What's going on? Dump that. Okay. Just copy this. Do. Post. No. Here. Share with my patrons. I got a Patreon. Doesn't everyone have a Patreon now? Pretty much. YouTube. YouTube Live. How's that going to work again? I forget now. Patrons looking for it doesn't exist. Use YouTube to go live. I already am live. Does it matter? Oop. There we go. That works. Don't want to schedule. Publish now. Publish now. All right. Right on. One more. Oops. Oops. There. Should do it there. Maybe I should invite some strangers too. What do you think? Post. So the story, the box, was an experiment. It started off as a project I was doing, going to be like a class assignment that I thought students could use. So a lot of times when I'm teaching making comics, it's kind of a writing class, and when we hit the point where people have to start writing longer stories, a lot of people just sort of stop showing up. And so to that end, I wanted to create something. If people were stuck, kind of hitting the wall, conceiving a story, I try to give them all the tools to do that before we get to the third or fourth class when they start getting longer and longer stories. We start off with like little 3-panel strips, make it nice and easy. Just like a little daily sketch of a 3-panel strip idea. And that's hopefully to get you into the pattern of thinking about story arcs and writing. But people still often kind of freeze up when it comes to a longer story. So I figured what I could do is suggest you could do something like look at public domain stuff, Brother Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, that sort of stuff, and take the collagen of one of those. So like, don't just illustrate it, though you can kind of do that, but also take the idea of the story and strip it down and rebuild it with your own details and information. So in this case, what happened was, just as by way of an example, I took a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Tinderbox, and I went through it and cut out all of the names, but then did another pass where I took out everything that's sort of specific identifiers, so genders and honorific roles. I tried to neutralize them a little bit and kind of just clear the slate so that all I had was a sequence of events with generic they, thems, did this, that, and then rebuilt it with my own ideas and visuals. And I changed some things too, because I'm trying to reconceive. I'm not just doing a copy of. It's more of an adaptation, and I feel like adaptation is a great way to start learning how to think about story. So I wanted to introduce that, and so that's what I did. And it took me a while to come up with a fun angle that I'm not going to give it away all, because you gotta read my comic. But I came up with turning them into, it's a non-human fantasy story. It took a little inspiration for things like Dark Crystal. This is the first spread page. Initially I was calling it 0 and 1, but it's basically 1 and 2 of the story. And let's see. This is actually, because you're seeing reversed, this is actually page 1 on the right. And if you notice the thing with books, page 1 is always on the right, and then it's facing it as just like usually a leaf. So anyway, like a blank sheet, but I'm using it here. So that's page 1 and 2 on mine, which is gonna mess with things later on, but it doesn't matter for now. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've progressed quite well. This is a couple pages later on. It's page 4. I really like this scene, how this came out. That's a favorite of mine in this project so far. And I really like the character I came up with here. That's, and that thing he's, so anyway, I'm now on That's 3, 4. This is page 5 or 6, I believe. I can't remember which. And I have to ink it. And I've bounced around a bit. So I've got one more after this, and then this stuff, the art for this one is done. It's just going to be black and white, which is nice. This is going to go into a book called Mind Engines that I'm creating, which I mentioned a little while ago. And that's just like a home for a bunch of different things I want to do. If you guys have any like questions or whatever, or just want to say boo, jump into the chat on YouTube and feel free to do so. I wonder, is anyone stuck at home because of quarantine? I think that's going to be a thing for the next few weeks. I've been thinking about for a while that I need to get my act together and figure out how to teach some of my courses or versions of them as online things. I think, for me, teaching has a lot of it's about the in-person interactions. So I've never been super eager to rush into doing virtual stuff, but not against it. I just need a lot of it, I need to figure out what to do in place of the over-the-shoulder, direct, hands-on teaching that I'm used to doing. I've installed Zoom, and I thought I would try to do, especially with all the shutdowns happening now, I thought I would try to make a point in the next few weeks of doing more streaming. The only problem with this is that I run into issues if I want to play music for myself. So one thing I'm doing right now is wearing headphones, which I was going to use to monitor the stream, but that's just going to create problems because there's a lag. So I'm just going to listen to my own stuff that you guys can't hear. I think I can turn this off too. Or do I want to turn this on? That's a good question. Oh, what's happening there? Oh. What just happened there?
Your headset is disconnected.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Getting confused with all my settings.
Phone 1 connected.
Oh, is it stuttering like that for you guys? So
Phone 1 connected.
I'm going to commit to just doing that. And we can do this. There we go. Okay. Looks like you got a good feed. I was wondering there for a second it's stuttering. Back to the music. Yo, Momentary Pixels. Did you chat long ago? I can't tell. I just looked up and noticed. Do I know who that is, Momentary Pixels? I'm not sure I recognize that handle. Oh, hey, Shen. Is it? Oh, yeah. I guess it's getting kind of late. That would be responsible of you. Get some rest. So I'm thinking about this scene here, this portal. That's what I'm drawing from the other side. I don't want to match it perfectly, but I'm trying to catch patterns I use and stuff. Make it close enough that at a passing glance, people will feel like it's the same. Mentioning this week, in my making comics class, watch for your continuity. Continuity, always the continuity. With a shorter story like this, it's a little easier because I can flip back and forth between pages. But even then, this is one that I'm going to go back and digitally and fix because I left his cuffs blank, but in fact, he's got like a military suit with stripes on his cuffs. Did I want to break that up? That's what I was trying to decide. I think those all look to be thinner tendrils than that, so that much for sure. And then do this. Do I have still scobbling on? You guys can't hear what I'm listening to in my headphones. But it's fun music. Film? Yeah. There. I used to have my music feeding through Last FM, so you could see my playlist. I don't know if that still works with my phone, though. There we are. View profile. Mm. That's the date. Mm. Nope, don't work. Oh, I'm not going to risk copyright stuff with music. Although, if you garble the noise, mix it low enough, they don't even really notice much. Okay, anyway, back to work. Oh yeah, I was gonna. Well, as much as it wants to zoom in now. Tri-monthly Friday the 13th, say. I didn't know that was a thing. Well, that explains everything, then. Sweet dreams, Shen. Okay. I need to clear that up and see how clear my rope is. That's a little bit filled in there. I need to open that up just a tad. I tap it very lightly to make sure there isn't a bulge or kind of pooling. So when I go back and work over it, I have both flatter but also slightly rougher surface. Won't be so smooth either, which is good for inking. Still don't want to erase over that with any rubbing motion. That's something anyone just starting to draw should know. Don't try to erase pencils over whiteout correction. If you were watching earlier, there's only 2 of you, so probably weren't. You would have seen me erasing with my kneadable eraser, a little piece of it, by rolling, which works quite well for picking up quite a lot of the lead. You can get the page lightened up a lot, which I often do before I start inking so I can see clearly what I'm doing. It removes the rubbing action, so it's better for that. Also, like, generally, without the rubbing, you remove less ink, so you don't lighten the lines either, which is good. It's always a little bit of a problem with normal erasing. But using a rolling or dabbing action. So dabbing is like this. I'm just taking sort of a rounded side of it and rolling. And then that's just a variation on literally rolling it around. It's like Play-Doh, this kneadable eraser. So it's got a great deal of versatility. I can make a little blade with it too and clean up a very small detail. Which is good with if you ever go deep with your pencils or pens and you have a bit of a ridge. It's good for that. But if you can not rub in general, it's better when you're erasing stuff. Where's the one going back up? There it is, right. Ta. Hello, Kobe Marbray. Thank you. Yes, things are pretty well. I'm well anyway. I mean, the world's freaking out, but so far no sniffles here. Fingers crossed. I'm actually high risk diabetic, so it'd be good if I didn't catch it. Thank you. Actually, bugging me a little bit, but I'll come back to it and clean it up later. It's a little bit rough here, but in a detail you guys probably can't see on the camera. It's good if the effect at a distance is working, though. I just want to clean up my lines. And by the way, hello, Wan J42. What was I doing there? I did a pattern. Check my continuity. I'm just listening now to a cover of the theme song for the Bugaloos. Am I saying that right? I think it's Bugaloos. It's just made me laugh because I recently learned that I was born, was it 4 days? 12, 13, 14, 13, 14, 15, 3 days before or after the Bugaloos, Josie and the Pussycats, and what was the other one? Some other popular Saturday morning cartoon show I used to watch as a kid first aired. They are my heralds. That makes me laugh. I'm trying to decide where to. I kind of want this area to be a little empty, so we have clear definition on the head. I've got which is my cover one by again? I think it's the one off of yeah, it's a Collective Soul cover. Saturday morning cartoon greatest hits. Can't say I listened to a lot of Collective Soul, but that was fun. Here. I think this will just go off after a while, but oh, it's not a cam though. Oh well, you don't need to see it. Yeah, no, it's okay. I'll go back to Zoom. Did the chat just move? Well, I'm probably going to it, if that's what you mean by. So someone asked me, Colby asked me if I'm doing the Sin Studio Gathering of Masters this year. And I usually go. I've never been a guest or anything, but I'm a teacher there, so I usually go and hang out. And it's interesting. One year I tried to get to a lot of the workshops, but some of them they hold damn early in the morning for me, so I usually just end up seeing the afternoon ones. But that year I tried to go to all the workshops. I also did a portfolio review with the guests, which I know the teachers don't typically do at Sin, but I was curious because I've been thinking about re-entering. So I used to do animation background design back in the 90s. And I'm not racing to get back into that, but as a freelancer, always sort of thinking about, a year or two out from now, what do I envision is going to be a good place to be positioned for trying to make a living as an artist. I've made my income primarily from art since the early 90s, so this just becomes part of the routine. And teaching at Sin, I've definitely got a nice inside look on a lot of how the concept art world has evolved, which animation background design is sort of an extension of what concept art is. It's all become kind of integrated now at this point. The tools are pretty much the same. I've done very little bit of 3D work, just to experiment with the programs. Enough to know that I can figure it out. And I'm kind of keen to try doing 3D building with VR, like an Oculus Rift rig. 2 years ago at the Gathering of Masters. What was his name? We had a really cool guest. He was there last year again too, and his whole, well, that's not his whole thing, but a big part of what he does is model with a VR rig on, and he demonstrated how. I was really impressed at how intuitive it was, and also how fun it looked. Which is, commercial illustration work is still work. Especially the part where you have to do things that aren't necessarily your idea. You're functioning as someone else's hands, sort of. You may be hired for your instincts and your aesthetics too, but someone's going to want you ultimately to produce something to their desired needs. And so you need to be able to derive joy from the process as much as the product. Is that the word? Certainly, if you find yourself, and you will, as a commercial artist, polishing turds, as the saying goes. It's always something people spend some time doing. I've tried to minimize it, but you can't avoid it. Sometimes just gotta be done. Pay the bills. It's fucking life, man. But if you enjoy the tools and the process a lot, it definitely makes almost any creative work in the moment much more enjoyable. So I say this as someone who actually has yet to put on a proper VR rig and really try the new ones. But at a glance, it looks like something I could definitely get into. So why am I saying it? All to say, Gathering a Master at Sin Studio. So this is the school I teach at for anyone watching going, what, who, what, where, what's this? What's this? Sin Studio is a private college Atelier School that evolved into a small college in downtown Montreal, and I have been a teacher there for 6 years. It's been actually really cool. So we just learned, by the way, today, that we're going to be closed for 2 weeks because of the coronavirus, which is good. I'm down with the flattening the curve tactics. It does mean the last classes of my dynamic drawing and making comics courses this September have been canceled. I think we might, I don't know. There was talk in the email about maybe doing a live streaming video version, but neither of the classes I planned for the final class of those two courses is really suited to that. So I don't know. Probably not happening that way, but maybe it is. Maybe we'll figure something out. I'll just do something different. Improvise. A lot of teaching comes down to essentially a riff on the concept of improvisation, in that you write a course, you have a plan, but ultimately you have to teach the students you have. I do have to teach them the ideas I'm there to teach, which are the ones embedded in my course, but I often have to tweak and find different ways to do that. Oops, too far. Do that. Yeah, I think that panel's done. Yes, sir. Don't forget the box. Get the box. That panel, I want to do something about those ragged looking. Depends on what you're doing it for, but for art, so like context, I'm self-taught is a bad term because I had teachers and mentors, but only a few of them were in the context of a schoolroom. So I went to an enriched arts high school called Wexford CI, and that was a great opportunity for me to spend a lot of my time in high school age working on my art. Did not really fit in school anyway, so I dropped out and never went to college, and mostly learned what I know on the job or just drawing on my own time. So my initial answer, Colby asked in the chat, would you recommend Sin Studio as a complete alternative to traditional college? So I would recommend an Atelier School generally to most colleges and university art programs. That's not, I'm going to caveat up front, I can't say that that's like the universal truth. There might be some colleges that can definitely provide awesome classes and opportunities, and there are going to be some ateliers that just aren't that great. So you never know. You always got to do your research and make sure the courses are good, and the teachers are good, and the class at school is good, and all that stuff. But I do feel like the more institutional the operation is, and more by a book and interested in like grading and passing people, they are, the less focus there is on just learning a set of skills and getting better at them versus evaluation by score and on a schedule. Pointing at my non-existent watch. That I've never liked that. So I've always liked the fact that my art classes are a la carte classes, and there's no marking. I just try to teach what I can. And I think Sin Studio is a pretty good school. I've only taken a few of our classes myself. I have taken a few. As a teacher, I get to take them free. So when I have free time and there's something I want to do, I was in the middle of saying, I took some 3D classes that we provide, and Colby was asking about the Gathering of Masters. I kind of lost my thread there, but that was kind of went to those classes for that, those workshops for that. And I think that the atelier environment can be really well suited to certain people who need a bit of direction, but also want a more dynamic learning environment that isn't too overly structured, as opposed to a course curriculum that's really rigid. So my impression is Sin's quite good, and it's got a great reputation for other people. I qualify that as said, I like to offer an informed, honest opinion, and I have only taken a few other courses and my own. I don't get to see what a lot of the courses do, but the students seem to be really enjoying themselves, and they seem to get really good. So that's a good sign. And I like the folks I work with. It's got a great vibe. There's been some turnover recently, so it's sad to see a few people go. But everyone I work with at the head office and at the school, and the teachers I do get to meet, have been nice to meet. So that's a good sign. You know, you can kind of tell a place is a good learning environment if folks are looking like they're enjoying their jobs. You know, yeah, I'm pretty proud to work there. So I'd give it a recommendation. I know that a lot of universities and colleges, basically, one of the negatives is that you're in a much bigger environment, so you get less direct attention. It ends up being by default just because they're dealing with bigger numbers. It's a bit more of a generic environment. There's a flip side to that too, though. It depends on what art field you want to get into. You also have a much bigger pool of people to connect with. So there's that too, probably. I definitely noticed that being a high school dropout, never doing the college run, a lot of my friends who went into college or university definitely had connections and networks, especially in their 20s and 30s, that were valuable to them that I never got to enjoy. And I did my best to make up for it just by, making up for it, being reasonably social in my youth, getting out there and connecting with people. But that's a definite plus when you're part of a good campus environment. And Sin got one too, but it's a smaller network, and that can go either way. It could mean that you're very tight friends with a small group of people. Let me just fix my light here. It just fell down. And doing stuff solo, so not going to any school the way I did it. If you're kind of out in the scene, that can be pretty good. Although there is something to be said about the fact that when I was doing that at like still high school age, there was a problem of being kind of like an anomaly. I was the only person my age in the room for a little while there. Didn't last long, but from like 18 to 22, I was almost always the youngest person in the room doing anything. And that was difficult to be taken as seriously as I would have liked. I don't know, that's totally removed if you're in school, but I feel like amongst your peer group anyway, you see less of that. I'm not sure. I often wonder. There was a while there in my 30s when I thought about going back to school. No problem, Colby. I was thinking about going back to school in my 30s and like retraining for new things. I'm not sure I could do it. Disposition wise, it's just me though. I do enjoy being a teacher though. So who knows? I might love being a student again. It would be different as an adult, that's for sure. So you here in Montreal then, Colby? Okay, that is done. Click on to do something to this. Feels a little odd there, but I'm going to leave it for Photoshop. You can tweak it. I know folks from Belleville. My best friends grew up there. Well, just outside of it anyway. Tyler is, I think that's familiar. He's one of the Unmasked crew, right? And he does synth music too, or something like that. Tobin Belanger is. I know a Belanger. I don't recognize Tobin. I know an Andy Belanger, the cartoonist. Is that like a brother, Tobin? Yeah, they do some cool stuff. Unmasked is for those who don't know, there's a core group and then sort of loose associated collective of artists who hook up with them, which they hook up with local artists. Tobin's your uncle. So are you related to Andy? Is Andy related to Tobin? I didn't know Andy was from around. Well, that fits actually. I think he's from somewhere in Ontario. That's not like a big city. I forget where he said what it was. I got to work with the MS guys a couple times, and twice it was with Tyler. He does some cool stuff. The eye is too big or too dark. I'm gonna carve into here. Uh-oh. My cat has discovered the door is closed. He's not impressed. That's better. It's only 30 million of us Canadians, you know. We're almost as. Was it again? Oh, jog my memory now. I'm gonna check before I say something stupid. Oops. There. But yeah, I mean, Canada's not that big a country, really. Oh yeah. What? Okay. I think that would be something that would give you a custom page for. So top, even like for secular Jews like myself, there are 23.5 million Jews in the world, and there are 30 million Canadians. So we're almost as rare. I'm a member of 2 minority groups globally. Hoo-hoo. Anyway. Both minority groups that have come to enjoy a considerable amount of privilege in the world as well. think it's time for some brushing. Where'd my, probably have my pages here. Yes. Good. This is for a story called The Box. It's going to be in Mind Engine, which I'm working on getting done for May. It'll be a collection of my latest things. And I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but you weren't here for that, I don't think. It was a byproduct of taking a public domain Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale called The Tinderbox and deconstructing it and then rebuilding it as a fantasy fairy tale. It actually started as a project for my classes, but I'm doing it as a story for my book as well. And just to mention again, anyone watching, the picture is backwards. If you happen to know how to make YouTube not do that, it seems to be inverting the image because it's all correct on my desktop. But YouTube wants to invert it. I went poking around. I couldn't see the settings. So, okay, hot tips about that. Let me know in the comments or the chat or whatever. This is going to be right down to here, probably, at least. Oops, put the mic there. Little funky asymmetry going on there. Probably mostly something to finish, fix, address, sort out digitally. Well, that pretty much just did it. By the way, if you're interested in checking out the box stuff, I believe, double check I did that. Yeah, at the top of the chat thread, you will find a link to Patreon, and it's a tag. It'll give you all the posts on Patreon showing the progress on this story and some related posts connected to Mind Engine project. It's coming out a little thick. Sometimes the ink starts running a little fast. Probably because it's warm in my hand, I think. It changes the viscosity just enough. Or if I've been squeezing it all. I don't think I was just now, though. I think that was just a bit of a blob. What was I doing there? Right, that's his two fingers. So, knuckle. There's some. On this page, most of it's down here in the bottom. This couple panels I'm doing right now, though, there is a little dialogue here. He's saying, I almost forgot it. And he just looks at it quietly. What's up with this box, he's thinking? What's the big deal? Why does the old one want it so much? Getting a little blobby again. Okay. Let that dry for a second. Pretty happy with the quizzical look. The upside of the reversed imagery, this is the thing I do with my Amir a lot, is look at my art backwards to check how it's playing out. And now I can just look up at the playback on the stream here. That's cool. Okay, I'm going to the little boy's room. It's oh, all right. Wait a minute. No. I need to do it this way. So it's coming from that side. That's right. All that practicing backwards writing in my 20s paid off finally.